Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Be Extraordinary podcast. We have the man, the myth, and the legend. Mr. Dustin Owen is with us with Waterstone Mortgage and the Loan Officer podcast. My man, I feel like it is way overdue. Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. It is way overdue because I think it was like a year and a half ago now that I had TY on the Loan Officer podcast, like literally one of the first episodes back before we knew what we were doing. I think our audio was pretty cruddy back then, so we may have to redo that, do a reboot. But yes, long overdue. Thank you for inviting me. I'm super stoked to be here, except for I'm not extraordinary, but I am extraordinary. So you may want to rename this one like being extra ordinary with D-O. Yes. Hyphen, or just two separate words.
Hyphenated.
By the way, if you didn't know what you were doing, I was like impressed. I left there, I was like nervous before, and then we left there, I was like, man, this guy's legit. You did the long form and you chopped up the clips for us and we were able to reshare those. So we've actually borrowed a lot of the stuff from that experience. And I know we're going to get into that in this episode, but
that's actually a good reminder. You did a really good job because you chopped those up and then you gave those to us, and it was a great piece of content that we were able to kind of reuse, which was awesome.
Well, I didn't do it, but my co-host and the producer, John Coleman. Shout out JC. But when I wanted to do what I wanted to do, which I run a mortgage company for a living, along with two partners. And I hit a point in my life where I'm like, I really want to lean into video, and I want to lean into video marketing. And I want to lean into doing some more training and some more coaching. And all the cool kids were doing podcasts. And I was like, well, maybe I'll just do a podcast and maybe we'll put that on video.
There you go.
But I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I'm a mortgage dude. I hardly know how to turn on my computer. I know how to work a financial calculator very well, but I'm like, I can't produce a podcast. So I put out a requisition. My HR department told me there's no way I was going to find someone who knew both social media as well as audio and video. And just so happened that, thank goodness, EA Sports is a local Orlando company. You've heard of Madden, right? Football and NBA Live, right? Those video games. Yeah, they make them. And this guy had worked there for like 12 years. And he had just had a layoff. And I think his mom and his wife were giving him a hard time because he hadn't found a job yet. So he's like, whatever, I see this media specialist for some mortgage company. I can't even spell mortgage, but I'll go on it. Yeah. And I was sitting there, I was interviewing him, and I was like, hey, man, do you know how to podcast? During the interview. And he told me yes. Well, he didn't. Yeah. But it's okay. He knew how to work a camera. He knew how to work audio equipment. He knew how to edit. He had a general idea. And what impressed me about him is he was I call him my Emmy award-winning co-host and producer, because one of the projects he worked on while being at EA Sports was a collaboration with ESPN, and that won an Emmy.
There you go.
I was going to ask you about the Emmy
awesome
thing, so that explains it.
Yeah. So he legit has an Emmy, but not the trophy.
Right.
It's just a certificate.
But he's got a certificate. Does it have his name on it?
Yes, he has a certificate with his name on it. Yeah, because
Is that on his resume?
I'm pretty sure
I would put it on the resume.
Yes.
I don't even think I'd send it in the resume. I think I'd just send in the certificate.
Yeah, just look, man, this says it all.
Yeah. So nonetheless, I'm like, how did I get down that rabbit hole of selling John Coleman? You had made a mention about the clips. Yeah, John Coleman does those clips.
Yeah.
But the thought behind the clips was, if you give your guest a token of appreciation, they can use it to promote whatever their product or likeness is. But also, it's going to be tagged with all your info as well.
Absolutely.
Right. So we were young. We were trying to grow the audience. We were trying to grow awareness. We had some ideas of where we wanted to go with the show, but ultimately your audience will dictate where you go in the future. So it worked out well, and I'm glad you guys were able to maybe find some inspiration with it.
Yeah,
it's a great touch.
It is. Inspiration's the right word, and for the listeners too. I mean, the Loan Officer podcast it started how long ago? A couple years ago?
2 years.
2 years
this month.
And it's amazing to hear that story about how it started, but then just to give context, it is an awesome podcast with an awesome audience, and the trajectory is insane and very cool how it all worked out. So I want to spend some time talking about it. I also just want to give a little bit of a highlight and background of who you are. You'd mentioned you're a mortgage dude. I like that. That says it all. But been in the business for what? You've been at Waterstone 15 years?
14 years at Waterstone. I entered the mortgage space in 2004. So my degree is in advertising and public relations from UCF. Go Knights.
Go Knights.
Go Knights. And I worked in television advertising probably my first 2 or 3 years out of college up in Atlanta, down in West Palm. Like many people, I fell into the mortgage industry. Basically, I hated my job at the TV station in West Palm Beach, started looking for other career opportunities, and entered entered the industry as a loan officer. So the podcast is called the Loan Officer Podcast because deep down at my core, that's who I see myself as. It's also because I feel like everyone should have a good mortgage loan originator in their back pocket, because our job is to know people. But the actual podcast, although it is leaned hard into by real estate and mortgage professionals, it's actually everything you should have learned in high school, but didn't. Like that's our overall theme is we want to get out there and impact our community by just teaching them the basics that maybe we weren't taught in high school. Things like budgeting, things like, financial planning or saving for retirement or how to buy a house, homeowners insurance, car insurance, et cetera.
Yeah, and that was what I learned that by being a guest on the show. It's just, and you people don't teach that stuff, and it's crazy. So you obviously find yourself in the mortgage industry. You have two business partners, been the same business partners for 15 years.
Yep. Yeah. Shout out in the mortgage side of things, David Holbrook and Mike Smalley. They've been my two ride or dies for the past 15 years. It's one body, three heads is how I explain it. Like that's how we run our operation.
Yeah.
That's sometimes a little tricky for our associates, right? We have 100 associates over 8 branches, and it's like, well, who do I go to? Because it's 3 people, but one body.
Sure.
But yeah.
We can relate, man. We have business partners, and I borrowed some of that too. You guys have great relationship, long-standing, and seems to work out really well. So you guys kill it. And then obviously founding partner of the Murphy Owen team, which, still involved. We were chatting a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, I entered the business as a mortgage loan originator. Like today, I would see myself more of, I hate using the word executive because if I use the word executive, it means I have to act like an executive, and I really don't like to do that.
If you use executive, you might have to throw on a tie.
I do wear
You
a
dress
tie,
up well.
actually.
You clean up. I was just watching one of your keynote speeches, and there was a nice blue suit in Nashville.
That was a tight Tom James custom made suit.
Was
That's
nice.
one of my favorites.
You look fresh.
That's one of my favorite suits. Yeah,
You look fresh.
Remind me one day to tell you the time that I rolled into a national industry event where I was being recognized on the main stage, and I had on a $3,000 suit and a $3 smile. We might not have time for it on this particular
$3 smile.
I have a picture that's
intriguing
that I can show you but not share with you. Oh yes.
So that's not for the viewers at home. Huh?
But yeah, you mentioned Murphy Owen team. At this point, it's Kevin Murphy's team.
Yes.
But I had my own book of business. You all are at Urban Young, you have your insurance agents. They have their books of business. I had my own book of business. Kevin was a buddy of mine from middle school. I hired him 10 years ago to come be my assistant. At this point, Kevin took over that book of business.
Yep.
He now runs it. He's one of the top producers in the entire country, not just for Waterstone, but for the entire industry. And he crushes it. He basically was able to take what I built, then he came in and helped me continue to build. I handed over, and he's just taken it and run with it.
Yeah, and I remember when that transition happened. And maybe talk to that a little bit, right? Because you made that transition seemingly intentionly.
Yes.
Right? You're producing for X amount of years, struck up a relationship with Kevin, or you had that relationship, and I would love to hear about that, because why do that? How has it worked out? Obviously worked out well, but what were the reasons that you said, hey, look, I'd like to take a step laterally, maybe not even a step back, and allow Kevin to step up and really run this team and be partners with him?
Well, I think it's like anything in life, when you're able to set goals, you're able to look out into the future. I mean, none of us ever have a clear idea of what the future looks like, but we can have an idea, right? Like I have an idea, I think I would like to do this, or I think this would work out. And I was getting to a point to where I was studying what do other businesses do? What does a financial advisor do when he or she is ready to retire? What does a dentist do when he or she is ready to retire, right? They sell their book of business. They sell their practice. An attorney does the same exact thing. Well, why couldn't a real estate agent do that? Why couldn't a insurance agent do this? Why couldn't a mortgage loan originator do this? So I figured, well, I have this theory, I need to put it into practice. And if I can put it into practice, I can maybe one day teach it to others.
Right.
Because a mortgage loan originator, especially just a few years ago, the average age was like 56 years old. So these people are probably looking at retiring in the next 4.5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
Well, what are they going to do? They built their whole entire careers building this following. Do you just walk away from it? Like, no, let's find a way to hand it over and also maybe take some residual income, even if it's only for 3, 4, or 5 years. So I was getting to a point to where I was very fortunate. David, Mike, and I were doing a great job of leveling up and expanding our brand throughout the Florida footprint. And like most businesses, the more you grow intentionally in hopes you bring in more revenue. If you bring in more revenue, the hope is you bring in more profit. And if you're part of the leadership team, you should be compensated on profit. So I knew I had income coming in if we could continue to build our operation the way that we were. I also knew that my book of business was also my umbilical cord. It was my lifeline. It was if the proverbial crap ever hit the fan,
right,
I could always go back to produce.
Right.
So I just set out and said, well, I would love to be in a point in my life where I don't have to produce and I'm able to cut the cord. Well, what does that look like? Well, at 37, I wasn't in a financial position to do that just yet. But what if by the time I turned 40, my goal could be I had enough money saved that I would feel comfortable cutting the cord, saying I'm good letting this revenue stream or income stream pass on. I'm confident in my ability to earn a living by growing the brand, and I'm going to free up time, and I'm confident in my ability and in my drive that with that extra time, I'll go find ways to bring value to other organizations. And if that value can compensate me, then I'm really not losing money, and maybe I'm giving myself an opportunity to make even more money, but only focus on things I like to do. So it was very intentional. So Kevin and I started, super long story short, because I know I can get long-winded. I put together a plan where it's like basically like, hey, look, this year I'm going to do half the work, you're going to do half of the work, and I'm going to make all the money. The next year, I'm going to do 25% of the work, you're going to do 75% of the work, and I'm going to make all the money. The next year, you're going to do all the work, I'm going to do none of the work, and I'm going to make all the money.
Are you in?
Yeah. And then starting in year 4, let's split that money. In year 5, that split works in your favor. By year 6, it's yours to run with. And what I needed was a runway. I needed to make sure this was going to work out. I needed to make sure that if I ever had to pull the ripcord, I could. Sure. And that means I'd have to jump back in. But it gave me an opportunity to monitor it and to coach him up.
Yeah.
Right. And to hold him accountable. And what's great about this, by the way, if anyone's listening and they're thinking, yeah, I want to do that in my business, it's way easier to hold someone else accountable to do the things that you were supposed to do than it is for you to hold yourself accountable to do the things that you knew that you were supposed to do.
Right.
So Kevin was actually able to best my best year twice in a row.
Oh, wow.
And I think one of those factors was it was market driven. Like it helps when the real estate market is going up like crazy in volume. It helps when we had a bunch of refis to do in 2020 and 2021. But it also is because Kevin was doing certain sales activities that honestly I wasn't doing. And some of that was I wasn't doing because I was working 2 full-time jobs. I was being a regional manager, running multiple branches, and I was still trying to produce loans full-time. Yep. And I found that it's really hard to do 2 things great. You end up doing both things average. Yeah. So I quit producing myself roughly 3 years ago. That allowed me to launch my passion project, the Loan Officer Podcast. That allowed me to grab another childhood best friend who had just retired from law enforcement and said, hey, have you ever wanted to have a real estate investment or real estate development company? Because I want one, but I don't have the time to run one. How about we partner together and we can use my resources allotted with your intellect, your experiences in your time, and let's launch a real estate investment, real estate development company. So we were able to do that as well. So now we have a company that buys homes, fixes them up, and flips them, or we buy homes, fix them up, and rent them. Mm-hmm. And right now, we're actually, it's funny you mentioned Eustis earlier because y'all's first office was in Eustis, Florida.
That's right.
We actually own 2 lots in Eustis, Florida, and we're building 2 new construction homes that we hope to have on the market by September, ready for sale.
Yeah. I know you'll probably sell them, in a month.
Yeah.
We will more than likely sell them about 60 days before they're even CO'd.
I was
and
about
ready
to say,
go.
you can sell them before they're done, man.
Yeah. We're like once the sticks and the roof and the windows all start going up, at that point we'll put a sign in the yard.
This looks like it could be a house. Sold.
Yeah.
You're in Florida.
And the one thing that we're battling with right now is you have so many corporations, hedge funds that are coming into our market and trying to buy homes. I think we're not going to sell it to them. I think we're going to make a conscious effort.
I love that.
That we want to sell it to a family.
I love that, man.
Yeah.
There needs to be more of that because that's a thing.
Yeah.
That's a thing, man.
Yeah. And look, it's going to be a tough pill to swallow because what if a hedge fund's willing to pay me 10 or 20% more?
Yeah.
Yep.
We'll see. We'll circle back and see if
right.
I actually heard something, a little bit of a pivot moment. I heard something on a podcast. I think it was Grant Cardone was talking about that 40% of the single families homes that are owned in America are owned by corporations or something like that. Yeah. Or maybe it was the last year.
Yeah,
or two.
It wouldn't be 40%. It's still a very small percentage, like single digit percentage, but it's grossly higher than it ever has been. Okay. And it is a bit of a concern, right? Because you start talking about people who are 28, 31, 33. Those are the prime first-time home buyer age brackets. And they're competing against all cash offers who are willing to pay 10% over appraised value because they're not using their own money. Yeah. It's hedge fund money.
Yeah, it's Wall Street.
And it's Wall Street with their, multimillionaire clients. And, all they're trying to do is pick up a very small spread. and purchase real estate. So it's going to be interesting to see how all that shakes out.
Yeah. That's a good background, man, because I was wondering, and so it's cool that you intentionally were able to step back. Because I remember that was 6 years is a long transition.
Yeah.
I give mad props for you being so intentional about it, and for obviously Kevin doing his part and stepping up, and to see him thrive now and him be running at the pace that he's running now, it's really cool. But I just, again, you saw it, and then you said, okay, let me borrow from other businesses, because I don't feel like that's as common in the mortgage business, right? That you're a producer, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, do I retire? And then it's like, so the fact that you did that like it was a practice or an attorney's practice or a doctor's, I think that was cool.
Yeah,
no, it was really cool.
Thank you. It was, and kudos goes to Kevin, because Kevin it's interesting. When I hired him, I remember my mom, because my mom's known Kevin since 6th grade as well. And my mom's like, hey, are you worried about this jeopardizing your friendship? And I had to make this decision. And I'm like, well, Kevin was a really good friend of mine in middle school and high school, but quite honestly, as adults, he went to University of Florida, I went to UCF.
Yeah.
I went off and got married and had babies, and he stayed single. Like, we really don't hang out. So if it doesn't work out, I think he'll be fine with it and I'll be fine with it. And we'll still keep whatever that relationship was. But I said, Mom, here's why I want to hire Kevin. I met him in gifted class. If he was in gifted, even if he was a screw up like me, which he was, and I was, he still has a certain IQ that's attractive. And I remember Kevin as a kid who had never played baseball. And in 9th grade, decided he wanted to play baseball. Well, in Florida, California, and Texas, you don't just show up to 9th grade JV baseball practice and make the team.
Right.
Like, it doesn't work that way, especially if it's a large public high school like we went to. Maybe at TFA where you went, they would allow that because they need players, and there's not that many students. But where we went, it didn't roll in. So he didn't make the team because he wasn't good enough. But the coach told him, you should go play Little League. Well, what high schooler wants to go play Little League as a 14 or 15-year-old?
Did he do that?
He did it.
Wow.
And in his sophomore year, he made the JV team.
Come on.
Yes.
Wow.
So that, to me, showed me something about his character. I remember that from when we were 14 and 15.
Damn.
That showed me something about his character. I knew at a minimum, this dude's coachable.
Yeah.
So he's smart and he's coachable. I'm like, so I told my
That
mom, I
says it
said,
all.
for that reason, I'll take a chance.
Yeah.
So the reason why I think it worked out is I had someone who believed in me, believed in us, I could trust emphatically, and I knew that he was smart and coachable.
Yeah.
So at that point, it made it easy to kind of take a step back, maybe take a leap of faith, and said, hey, let's see how this works.
By the way, I would like to tell the story about how we met. I think.
Oh my gosh, it's one of my favorite stories to tell. In fact, I don't think I told Michelle that I was coming today to do this, and she still shakes her head and laughs. She goes, how did you become friends with him that way? I'm like, that's just how we both roll. I don't know. You start. You kick it off.
Yeah. I'm sure we have different versions, but they're the same. And then,
there were some brown at moments.
Yeah, from what I remember. No. So we were in Ann Arbor, Michigan for the UCF Michigan game. The year's not important, but it had to be like 2016, 17.
It was KZ's freshman year, and he hadn't earned the starting job yet, because my first beer I actually had with KZ's dad.
Okay.
Mackenzie Milton, for people who didn't go to UCF.
Sure.
And I didn't know it was his dad. We were just talking, the two guys at the bar talking. He was talking about how his son's getting gypped on playing time. But anyway, so it was whatever year that was. So if KZ is a 5th year, right? So 5 years ago from 20, it was like 2016.
Because it was actually
2016.
Nick Patty's senior year. So,
yes, okay.
Right? And Nick Patty is somebody who works with us now, a longtime friend, but it's a full circle type deal, right? The fact that we're recording this podcast and all these full circles. But nevertheless, we get smacked up in Michigan, UCF Michigan game. It's a noon game. So, everyone's tailgating before.
Was that the first,
by the way,
that was the first time they ever played, right?
Yes.
That was a huge deal.
Huge deal.
Yeah, and I think we covered the spread. That's all I cared about.
I can remember.
I didn't care that we won. I like both times that UCF went up to like the Horseshoe and played Ohio State. They covered the spread. I had an Ohio State fan welch on a bet. So some dude in Columbus owes me $100. And then, but yeah, so we were at the big house.
Yeah, so we're at the big house, which is an incredible experience.
Yes.
I mean, so because that Big Ten country. I mean, that's the largest stadium in the world of that size, I think, or it's the second largest in the world.
108,000 were at our game, but they can pack in like 111,000.
Crazy. I mean, classy fans. They really treated everyone really nice, and so it's a noon game, right? So you're done. You tailgate early. Maybe you catch a little buzz. You go to the game. You can't drink in the game, right?
No, it's not like going to a UCF home game.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Very different. Big Ten country. And then after the game, what does everyone do? Right, you get the rest of your day, so everyone's falling into bars and restaurants and or at least people like us, clearly. So we fell into this like speakeasy type downstairs bar, like kind of dark, and we're having a blast as a group of guys. Rod Herb, our partners, with us, and a couple other guys. And then you were sitting on a table just right outside,
Yeah, we were sitting at the bars. It was my wife and I, my best friend Joey, and his wife.
Yeah.
And it's rare for the four of us to get out and do something like this. So we're doing it. And I've known Joey since middle school as well. And he was in my wedding. I was in his wedding. And honestly, it was our second bar. And we kind of weren't in the mood yet. We were kind of getting started. It was slow moving. And, but yeah, ran into you guys.
That changed the game, huh?
Yeah. And I think you're trying to steal my spot at the bar, trying to wiggle into.
Yeah. Hey, man.
Little David.
Yes.
Yeah, he snuck in.
Of course he did.
He snuck right in.
What a guy.
Yeah, he starts ordering drinks, and we start talking, and I don't know how the rest of it, like how this part transpired, but if we wanted to fast forward, we ended up
We were out
at
till
some club.
Yeah.
With a like a
Throwing
velvet
napkins.
rope with bottle service, right?
Sounds right.
At some point throughout the night, we were crammed into a like Uber, like 9 of us.
Yeah.
And my wife is like such the girl next door do-gooder, right?
Right.
She is like the perfect everything. And for her to be okay with a group of strange dudes
Right.
and her husband and her husband's best friend, and we're all crammed into this ride. We end up with bottle service.
Yeah.
It was nuts.
Yeah, we ended the night, we ordered 50 soft tacos from Taco Bell.
Savages.
Just one large order.
Savages.
But it was a great story because in the reality of the things, we got talking in the bar, hit it off, and he's like, "You're in the mortgage business? You're in Orlando? You're in the insurance business?" We just got ripping from there, and then it was bar, club, obviously, in the night, early flight home, and then, hey, man, we've become good friends.
Yeah, and 6 years later, here we are today. I still come and see him at basketball games. We do lunch once or twice a year. We do business together. Like you guys are actually who does my auto insurance and my homeowner's insurance. Like
it's awesome.
It's been legit. The club, by the way, here's how it went down, Brett. This was at the end of the night.
I do remember.
And I go to because my wife really got pissed at me. Can I say that word on the show?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
well, on
can.
my show, they sometimes have to bleep me out, but it's okay. But I walk up to the we're a college town, Ann Arbor. So I walk to the door, and we have a group of however 9, 10 of us, and they're like, cover charge $5. I'm like, okay, that's
Huge
$45.
line. Yeah.
And I'm looking, and there's this whole space that's not being used, and I could see that it's roped off. Well, the only time I've ever done bottle service, which isn't a lot, by the way, it was either because someone else paid for it, like when I was in college and it was someone's bachelor party, and I was like, this is so cool. Or my business partners and I have done it a couple times in Vegas, like celebrating the year we had at some kind of award ceremony and probably entertaining some of our top producers. Well, I'm in Ann Arbor, and I'm used to like Vegas, where like bottle service, like, $400 a bottle, you got to buy 3 bottles. And they're like, oh, well, like, what if we don't want to pay cover and we want to go in that private area that's right off of the dance floor, and it has the ropes, so we have all this space, and we're not crammed in on the dance floor with everyone else. They're like, oh, it's 2 bottles. I was like, how much are 2 bottles? And they're like, $100 a piece. And I'm like, what? Like, yeah, $100. I'm like, anything? Like, I want a bottle of Crown, and they want like a bottle of Belvedere. Like, or Belvedere, that's good. I'm like, yeah, $200. I'm like, come on, ask him the guy. He's like, yeah. And I was like, sign me up, let's go.
Let's go.
And my wife may have had flashbacks where I've done that at places like,
Yeah,
the whole bar gets shots.
Right.
But yeah, it was like only $200 to $250, and like 9 of us got in, and 9 of us got to drink. If you try to do that a la carte,
Right.
I bet our bar bill would have collectively been well over $300 or $400. It was actually a deal, and we had all this extra space.
It's actually responsible for you to do that, like the fiscally responsible.
I am
Nothing responsible about that.
I am and I have always been the most responsible F up you could ever hang out with.
That's perfect.
Like I was the guy in high school who had the fake ID, would go and buy all the beer, and then make sure I took everyone's keys, and I brought 2 trash bags.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I was leading the charge. I was making sure that all these underage baseball players were drinking, and we had our fun. But no one was going to drive, and we were going to clean up after ourselves.
Yeah,
Fascinating.
that's perfect. Was it dichotomy? There you go.
Yeah,
Oh, man,
it's
that's a funny story, but anyway, no, I want to get to the podcast, man. So you started it, you take this step back, and we get back, and all of a sudden you start at the start, right? You go, like, we were just having some fun off air, just talking about how you met John and who's the co-host and so on and so forth, Grammy Award winning, whatever. But it's like, what were the first couple episodes like, and where's it progressed now?
They were trash. I mean, you go back and listen to it, and they were trash. They were fun though. Like, you have to find your voice. And if someone were actually go to YouTube, here's a little shout out at the Loan Officer Podcast. That is the show, whether it's Instagram or Facebook, or there's even a website, tloponline.com, TLOP, which stands for the Loan Officer Podcast.
Ridiculously awesome, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Now, by the way, if we talk about that, we never thought we were going to have a website. We never pushed for a website. This was a culmination of kind of like fan or viewer request, kind of led us down this path. But if you talked to me 2 years ago, I didn't even need a website.
I love that, man, because like how many people start something with this grandiose plan, which is fine, which is good. But I think there's a lot of value in leaving a little bit of a blank canvas, because then you actually listen to what the viewer wants. You listen to what the listener wants. Like you're like, oh, okay, this is going in this direction. And so I think there's a lot of value in that. It's like, oh, well, you don't have to have it all figured out. It's like, just start. And then you'll kind of figure it out as you go.
That I coach that day in, day out. I think if you try to get too granular in your thoughts, then you may miss so many opportunities. Just that whole saying our parents used to use, you can't see the forest through the trees. Like you kind of have to expand. That's where, and you'll hear me say all the time, hey, take a step back, take a deep breath, and let's just look. And let's just figure out where we're going to go. So you asked about the beginning. No, like I had an idea. I knew that at the end of the day, as a mortgage loan originator or as a branch manager, regional manager, VP, whatever my title was, I constantly was giving advice on fiscal matters to the consumer. That's what I did as a loan officer. Now, they came to me because they wanted to qualify for a home loan, but what I gave them was a whole lot more, right? I may have taught them about 529s or exposed them to different insurance strategies like people like you had taught me and I could teach them. Or maybe I read a Dave Ramsey book on budgeting, and when that person didn't qualify, I may have just recommended, hey, go read this book and follow these principles. So I knew going into it that, well, if I create a podcast, then I'm creating content that me and my loan officers could push out to our clients. Worst case, I'm creating content for our roughly 2,000 to 3,000 new clients that we bring on every year, plus all of our past clients, which we have at this point 20, 30,000 of them.
Wow. Yeah.
And then I was like, well, what's part of my role as a leader at Waterstone Mortgage? Well, I help coach and mentor loan officers and branch managers. Well, what if I created content that was for them? So I knew going into it that, okay, I'm going to create some content for the customers of Waterstone Mortgage. I'm going to create some content for the salespeople as well as the sales leaders of Waterstone Mortgage. And worst case, I spend 2 hours a week, and John spends 8 hours a week because someone has to produce this and cut it up and do what they have to do to edit it and get it polished. We're bringing value to the company. But in the deep down the back of my head, I thought, well, what if consumers love it so much they share it? And then those people start calling and we can use it to acquire new clients. I learned, by the way, that's the hardest segment to lean into. We have yet to close a loan from the podcast. Yeah. I've had maybe 2 leads come in from the podcast. It doesn't mean I'm going to give up on the idea. It just lets me know that this may take a 5 to 7 year build before you grow the audience large enough and have enough good content. Because we'll get into good content versus original content or beginning content, but we put it out there, and what I started realizing, it's fantastic for recruiting, right? So we're touching mortgage professionals or future mortgage professionals with some of our content from Spokane, Washington to Key West and everywhere in between. Well, when you're running any business, you guys started in a small, tiny office in Eustis, Florida. Then you opened one in Southwest Orlando, and now you're in Melbourne and Jupiter, and right, you're expanding. Same thing goes in my world. I need to expand. I expand by bringing on new offices and new salespeople. The podcast allowed us to lean into that. And that's kind of where we were. But now we're getting opportunities to coach other sales professionals. We're creating even more content that people want to pay for or they're willing to pay for. We're thinking about doing some live events like, now on a large scale, who throws the best live events? Well, Tony Robbins does. Well, I never want to be Tony Robbins, but could I put on a live event that was just geared towards mortgage professionals and get 100 of them to Orlando, Florida once or twice a year?
Can you have them walk on fire?
I will walk on fire for them if they want to laugh at me.
If it's okay, I would love to come walk on fire with you with all the yellows.
Have you done that?
I have done that.
You've done. So I think I want to do a Tony Robbins event, and I think I want to take like my kids and my nephew and my niece. Like, have y'all ever tried doing that or done something like that?
It's intense. Yeah. So I'm sure that'd be amazing. It was significantly more intense than I anticipated. I think Taylor would say the same thing.
Intense from an emotional standpoint.
Yeah, just like all in. Just you leave long hours, emotionally, you're invested. And what it was 2014.
He just gives you everything. Like, you're there at 6:30 in the morning, and I think one night we left at 2:30 at night.
And then you're back
That
at
was
7
one
a.m.
day. That was one day.
That's a lot of rah-rah. Is it all rah-rah, or some of it like
strategy, man? It's deep dive within. It's a lot. I mean, you're walking on fire. So the three of us did it, actually, a partnership, Rod and Brett.
Did you walk or jog, out of curiosity?
Dude, I walked and I didn't feel shit.
Okay.
Like, I'm talking about, you have people the next day that show up. I remember thinking, like, because, they try to prime your state in a way that, hey, there's a science behind it. And I walked over Coles and I was like, dude, I didn't feel anything. I could have gone for 40 yards. I don't know about you. But then the next morning, I get to the seats, and some people were like, yeah, we actually got burned. We were in the hospital. Like, it was light burn, but it was like, I was like, what? So I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what your experience was.
Yeah,
Maybe it's those crusty ass feet you have.
Yeah.
You could smell the flesh, though, burning outside.
No way.
Yeah, you could smell it. It's crazy. I mean, it's intense.
But you had people in
here in Orlando
wheelchairs that were walking on their hands. They would get off and somebody would carry them. So you're looking at it, you're like, all right, I got to walk on fire. There's some crazy things you see because of the commitment level to some of the people that are there.
So did you do this as like a leadership team? You all went and did this together, or did you do it with your spouses, or?
We just did the three of us
Okay.
as a partnership, which was actually a really key moment in our partnership. And it served as a very significant event that shifted, that started some really cool things to happen.
Well, and your partnership's unique because it's a three-headed monster, right?
Mm-hmm.
Similar
Similar
to what I have, which it's interesting. Some people are like, how do you do it? And I'm thinking, well, how do people not do it?
I love that.
We say the same thing.
I once read an article. I was probably still in college when I read this, and it still sticks with me because it was the first article that I read that says being a millionaire isn't crap. You have to be a pentamillionaire. So that was 2000. So now it's probably even a decamillionaire, right? We kind of like, so penta means five. Yep. So until you have $5 million in the bank, you probably aren't really there. Maybe our parents, if you got $1 million back in 1980, was great, but in 2000. No, you had to have 5 million. 2020, probably it's 10 million. But in the article, it says, who are those that achieve it? Well, obviously those that is bequeathed to them. Okay, well, you didn't earn that. Yeah. Sorry, trust fund babies, but it's not yours. Don't tell me how much money you have and the homes you own and the cars you drive if you didn't go out and earn it. Mm-hmm. Just, you have it, cool, high five, but then give grandpa or dad or mom all the credit.
Right.
But the others is usually entrepreneurs. And it said the success rate. A partnership of 3 had the highest success rate.
Really?
And the next in line was a solopreneur, 1. And then the worst odds were a partnership of 2.
Interesting.
Wow.
And that's still, and who knows if that article was fake news or real news when I read it, but it's really cool. And then y'all's dynamic, I'd love to get to know because big brother, little brother, right? What's the age difference?
3.5.
3.5, but Rob's older than you.
Yeah, Rod's is, it's just over 10.
Yeah.
A little over 10.
And that's similar. David is 9 years older than Mike and I. Mike and I are, I'll tell you the same age. He'll tell me he's younger because I was born in November. He was born in June. So however many months that is, right? That's 7 months difference.
Yep.
So he calls me the old man, but no, it's cool that you chose a Tony Robbins event because you kind of have to still be your individuals, but also be aligned enough so that you can find like the opportunities. Well, how do I problem solve? How do we get through when situations are sticky or we don't necessarily see eye to eye? And
we call it like philosophy, like the way that we view things. We have similar principles. Now, our perspective might be different because we have different opinions and we have different experiences, but the lens, we kind of align on what that lens is going to be. So you're right. That kind of not forced us, but allowed us to take some of those. They were already pretty tight just because we've worked together a long time, but allowed us to kind of condense those down and really get aligned on that stuff. But that's coming from somebody who understands that, because when you have 3 people, it is really important that you kind of see things the same way. So you philosophy, what you believe, how you hold that belief, and then how that drives or affects what you do. Like that's how I would define philosophy. If they're very similar philosophies, then you might have a different opinion on how to handle it, but you have the same you have the same outcome you're looking for or way of thinking, which is very helpful when you're trying to make decisions.
Yeah, it's like you're looking in the same general direction. Your vantage point's just a little bit different on how to get there or the path forward.
Yeah, because now you're talking tactics instead of like broad scope belief ways that you handle things. But that's funny. So I met with somebody the other day, and they have a partner of two. And they were telling me about some situations they were
Good
dealing
luck,
with.
sucker.
Yeah,
And
statistically you're gonna fail.
Well, just challenges, and I thought about it, and I never gave much attention to this, but as we've progressed and as things have come up, we've had our challenges as partnerships, and we've definitely had, bumps in the road, and luckily for us, they've made us stronger. I think anybody that has partnerships to think you don't have conflict that's not true. But so he was telling me about this, and I'd called somebody, it's one of the guys that started You Break, I Fix, and they have a partner of 3. So I called him and I asked for some advice. And he said, man, he goes, 3's a really good number. He goes, because 2 of you will get in a dispute and not agree on something, and you'll have the 3rd one to mediate for it. And I was like, damn, dude, that's very true. Because, we're brothers, so we can go at it, and Rod's a great mediator. He's really good. But then also, Rod and I have battled and gone at it, and Taylor's a very good mediator. So I don't really have to mediate for those guys. I think I'm the problem most of the time.
I was going to say, you didn't hear Brett was a good mediator. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah,
no, he's done that as well.
But that's what's worked for us is 2 out of 3 wins, period. Period. End of story. 2 out of 3. And the third person has always, and we're very fortunate about this, going on 15 years, has always taken the back seat, but not just taking the back seat, but also grabbed their oar and started rowing. Sure. Hey, look, because I think you mentioned this, Brett, most times it's not a decision of right or wrong. Right. It's a decision of which option do we think gives us the best chance of being right.
Yeah.
And usually maybe all 3 options will give you the same chance or a chance, but one would be a higher probability.
Yeah. Yep.
So, Taylor thinks one way, you think one way, I think one way. Either way probably is going to be a good enough decision.
Yeah.
But we have to figure out which one of our ideas is the one we're going to get behind.
Yeah, we all agree upon the outcome we're looking for.
Yes.
But maybe there's a different way to get there. So, and the one thing that I'm very proud of with the 3 of us is, we have a lot of debate and a lot of discussion about stuff, but the 3 of us, I don't know where it came from, but we are very, there's almost like an unspoken that sometimes you just need to be okay with quote unquote losing, and if I see the conversations going to where they both line up and I necessarily don't, maybe we don't vote on it per se because we don't necessarily do that, but I see that they too feel a certain way, and it's like, okay, well, I remember the last 3 times and one of them took the back seat on it, and I go, okay, you know what? I don't necessarily agree with this, guys, but I'm going to trust,
Check this down.
And I think there's a lot of value in that to say, like, if you're in a partnership or you're working with somebody and you have to use your idea all the time, you can't just, back off a little bit when someone else agrees. That's kind of that's a recipe. That's a hard thing to get over. Because if you're going down, if you grab your oar and you're resentful, that's not really grabbing your oar. That's going, man, I trust that you guys are right, because I'm not right 100% of the time. I think I'm right on this one, but you know what? I'm going to trust because that's why we're partners, so I'm going to trust, instead of being like, okay, well, I'm mad about this, but I'll pretend like I'm going to, grab my oar.
Now, don't get me wrong. There's been times like early on when, like any new company, early on, for the most part, you're dead broke.
You're starving.
And you kind of think you know what you're doing, but you really don't.
Yeah.
So there was a time that it was Mike Smalley in our partnership. He's like, hey, we need to go spend $5,000 on this particular software upgrade to our CRM. Mm-hmm. And David and I, like $5,000, that may have been the quarterly distribution.
Yeah.
That was going to be split 3 ways. And we're like, no, hell to the no. And he felt so strongly. He said, fine, take it out of my pay. Right? When possibly I was looking at launching a podcast. And I had originally told David and Mike in the budget, I needed enough money for a part-time associate. I might have then allegedly met John Coleman,
right,
and offered him a full-time position. Oops. And I didn't even check with my 2 partners. And I just, in our next board meeting, raised my hand and I said, I believe in this. Take it out of my pay. Right? So there's been times that we've had to do that.
Yeah.
Most times, though, and I found I was going to ask you this question. I think I know the answer, but would you state that all 3 of you are, for the most part, confident people? Like, you have a high self-worth and you're pretty confident in your ability?
Yeah, I think the answer.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because anyone listening is like, well, I want to do a triumph. I want to have a three-headed monster.
Yeah.
I think it also works if all three people don't have insecurity issues.
Yeah.
And that are very confident in their own ability, because it allows all three of us to not have to be right, or for our idea not to have to be the one.
Yeah.
Right.
Where maybe someone who lacks the self-confidence, they may mask that insecurity of always having to be right.
Sure.
And then it becomes very confrontational. When your idea is not selected, you take it personal.
Sure.
Yeah.
We were just talking about taking it personally off air with Lorenzo earlier.
Yeah, shout out to Lorenzo. He's one of the most unbelievable people I've worked with.
Me and little Renzo rolling in our benzo.
There you
Wow,
go.
that's a little Ice Cube, I believe.
There you go.
Yeah.
Shout out to the halftime show at Super Bowl.
I wanted to hit on this because I think some people can take some value out of this. Just real life examples. What's worked for us. You talk about taking out of your pay. This last quarter, we specifically made some decisions, and we didn't take a quarterly distribution. So we do quarterlies. Shout out, by the way, if you're going to take distributions, I would suggest you take them quarterly, because you don't get into situations where you are stuck with where you're at. It's better to do it quarterly because you can pivot. But we had a bunch of things that we wanted to do. And one person says like, hey, we need to do this. And I'm like, okay, but you realize that that's going to impact this. And that's not their lane. They're like, I'm trying to move this lever, right? That's my deal, right? They all three have our own spaces. And, they felt the same way. Like, we need to do this. We've kicked the can down the road. We need to do this. And I'm like, okay, but this is going to impact actual, what you take home, right? So if you want to do that, this is what it looks like. And the answer was, what I'm proud of is it was all three of us. So there was one person's thing. They wanted to do it. And all three of us said, all right, well, if you feel that way, we're all going to not take our distributions. So what was helpful for us is we're just in the same boat all the time. And not everybody can do that. I get that. But it was almost like, the pressure for them to make the decision was almost even more, because it wasn't just them not taking their pay.
It's everybody.
It's your partners not taking the pay. So it's almost like, well, this better be a good decision, and I better work on this, and I better move the ball forward on this, because I got my guys not taking income too. So, and I think it's just a good reminder that once in business, like, you can pull as many levers as you want, but when you pull one lever, just know that there's other stuff getting tangled with when you pull it.
So how is that NetJets membership working out for you guys?
Yeah, fractional ownership. Hey man, that's a dream of mine. I make no apologies.
I have never been on a PJ. Have you?
I have, but I don't think you count as a PJ. It's a charter flight, but it wasn't like a G6, G5. Like,
no, I want
MJs.
leather seats.
You want like
not the plane I jumped out of when I went skydiving when I was 23 years of age. That was a 1974 Suburban with wings.
Sure.
Some people would call that like a private plane.
Yeah.
I want like a PJ. I want to go somewhere where,
for business, of course.
Yeah,
no, you know what? It could be the Super Bowl. I'm not opposed
but for
to
business. No, I'm kidding.
No,
I was telling my wife the other day, we'll be for business. We're gonna be opening other offices.
Yes, it's always for business. I mean, look, I'm looking for new guests on the podcast. You never know. I'm thinking about opening a branch in Las Vegas. Like,
there you go.
Yeah, multiple times a year I have to go.
Yes, correct. But it's still a dream of mine. My brother-in-law works for CSX, the railroad company, and he's in real estate, so he has to travel for work, and he kind of humble brags like, yeah, man, it's so rough whenever I have to get on the corporate jet. He's like, imagine you just roll into the parking lot of the airport and your wheels up in 15 minutes.
Right. No security.
Like, wheels up in 15 minutes. I'm like, holy cow.
I mean, at some point, like, time is money, right?
Yeah.
Like, at some point, there is a break-even point to where you're like, all right, that's a little better than TSA pre-check.
Hey, look, I'm telling you, man. Every time I fly, I'm just like, look, man, we got to get there. We got to get there faster, because I can't be waiting in the security line. It's been an hour. I'm sweating,
right?
But I did want to say, everyone's had their thing too. Everyone had that thing that they said, hey, I kind of want to bet on this, or I kind of want to hire this many people instead of that many people, because I think this is the right thing or the right time. And for Brett, one of the big pushes he had a few years back was this content thing, this content creation thing. And we had, outsourced our marketing, we rebranded, and then we contracted. And then Brett was getting to the point where he had this vision. He's like, look, man, I want to put out 100 pieces of content a month. Like, I want to produce at this level. I want to do a podcast, all this stuff that was kind of 2 years ago. Probably 2 years. It was still kind of before it seemed like it was common, or before it seemed to make sense, where you're like, man, that's a big bet. That's a bold strategy. Even if I find value, there's going to be a lot of resources headed that way. The equipment, we were fortunate enough to be able to, hire Lorenzo, who's a total stud.
Or even the opportunity cost. It's not even how much it costs. It's about what you're not able to do with that, right?
Right. There was a choice
no.
there. There was a bet there.
Right.
And so it moves around. And one thing you said that struck a chord, and I remember I think it was Jocko Willink, extreme ownership guy and incredible podcast, but it was about how leadership is just guessing. They're good guesses. No one knows the path. No one knows the right way. You may know a general direction or some philosophies or science of achievement to be able to get you there. But when you're three partners, you're making these little mini bets all the time, these mini guesses. And I think anybody that's in a leadership position, you can kind of take some solace in saying you don't have to be right. You don't have to have the perfect plan. You just have to keep going, and so that really struck a chord.
That's James Clear's Atomic Habits. Just get 1% better per day. Put one foot in front of the other. Try it. If it works, double down on it. If it doesn't work, figure out why it didn't work and pivot.
Yep.
Or just move away from it and find something else.
Yeah.
What I love about your podcast is I don't ever hear you all really pimp out Urban Young or insurance products. I mean, it's the Be Extraordinary podcast. Obviously done by design, but this is one of your pieces of content. And you all produce, how many episodes are you all doing at this point? Like, what's your frequency on your episodes?
Yeah, we're probably bi-monthly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then are your other content pieces more insurance focused and you run them on IG or Facebook? Are you doing SEO or Google Click ads? Like, is that all part of your content that you're doing? Or?
No, we're not doing SEO or Google Clicks. I mean, we've got some strong review processes that we did, so we show up pretty good on Google, but we haven't even gone paid ads yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you guys are still by referral only.
Yeah.
Like your local communities refer you, your past clients come back to you, which is clutch. I mean, that is, if you go way back in the day, like going to the 90s, this guy Joe Stumpf, I mean, that was his program, by referral only. And it just taught businesses how you can be a business where you don't have to spend money necessarily on advertising. So, but are you hitting the 100 pieces of content?
I think we're actually more than that now, which is awesome.
At first, that sounded like crazy.
Yeah.
You're like, dude, what?
Because 100 pieces of content per month, right, is 3 pieces per day.
Posted, right?
Yeah,
posted.
It's definitely more than that now. I mean, but it's what's really fun. You talk about being able to do something and to teach it and stuff. Like our entire process that we've built from square one, and we have an entire CRM just for the content pieces. And Lorenzo's done an amazing job of kind of quarterbacking how that looks. And there's a whole wheel that's turning behind the scenes to be able to get that done. And the tough part about that was when we started, I'm sitting there editing videos on my Mac, or from 3 hours in the morning.
The owner of an insurance.
Yeah. I would get up at 4 a.m. I would have 2-3 hours. Then I'd get the kids ready. Then I'd go to work. But the point was, these guys, I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to spend budgetary money and take it out of what the other guys were looking to do. I had to, it was kind of like I had to prove the concept a little bit. So I was like, all right, well then I'll take that on myself, and I'll do that. And once we gain a little traction, then I'll be like, hey guys, it's kind of like the same thing. You fire little bullets, and then it's a cannonball. It's not like, hey, I got this big grand idea. Maybe we're right, maybe we're not. I think there's where the mistake is, right? They're mini bets. You got to be able to take mini bets. It's like, well, I don't want to do that. I don't want to take the time out of my schedule to do that. It's like, well, then how bad do you want it? Some people have resources for money. Some people have resources for time. And at that point in time, it was like all of our resources were allocated to things that were working. So how do you take resources away from things that have good traction, that are working, to do something that might work? That doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense. So, and I think that's just I appreciate you saying that, but I think there's 100 examples of that, in all of our businesses that we could borrow from.
So you're sitting here talking, and I'm reading your shirt, and I made the joke when we first kicked off now 50 minutes ago that now I'm extraordinary.
There you go.
Right? Your shirt says be extraordinary, but you too, Brett, you're extraordinary. You do what ordinary people do, and then you do a whole lot extra, right? Mm-hmm. That whole getting up at 4 a.m., then you get your kids off to school, then you go and work your full-time job. That's what extraordinary people do. Mm-hmm. It's take the ordinary and then let's add some extra. And T.Y. and I were talking off camera, off mic, and he was asking me, I think I was talking about the version 2 and version 3 of the website and with the trajectory of the podcast. And the comment was kind of like, you love this, don't you?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, like I don't turn off.
Yeah.
Right. So like, although I am extraordinary, what that means is I go to work Monday through Friday. Let's just say 8:30 to 4:30. Right. Some days I'll roll in at 9:30 because I had an extra long training session in the morning, or I may leave at 4 because I have an extra long training session I have to, want to be able to accomplish. But I don't just turn off. Right. Like the weekends and the nights. Like if you're John Coleman, I'm shooting him emails at 6 p.m. and I'm shooting him emails at 6 a.m., 6 p.m. on a Saturday, 6 a.m. on a weekday. And it's maybe I am extraordinary, but I'm also only doing things I love to do.
Yeah, the creative juices are just
So
moving.
when people look at maybe aspects of what you all have been able to achieve, I think they need to understand, or other people have been able to achieve, it's not because they just work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, they come in and trade their time for a paycheck. Yeah. It's like, nah, this is their ever being. Like people ask me like, well, what are you? Are you a podcast host? Are you a real estate investor? Are you an angel investor? Are you a dad? I go, I'm all of that. And I'm all of that 24/7. I'm always going to be a father and a husband and a brother and a son and a mortgage professional and a podcast host and an angel investor. And it's like, it's who I am, and a person who's trying to run. By the way, I signed up for a half marathon. Half Ironman finally.
Let's go.
So hopefully I'm going to be able to say, hey, I'm a finisher of a 70.3. It won't be the full, but still, Wilmington, North Carolina in October.
Well, we got to get you some Be Extraordinary gear, because if you come across that finish line, man,
I'm sure he'll be in the Loan Officer podcast.
You throw a little sweatband for us, man. Give us some love.
If you give me a Be Extraordinary shirt, I will be sure to pimp it and rock it out. I'll wear it on the T-Lop.
Let's go.
I will wear it on T-Lop. I'll be sure to pimp it out. Yes.
By the way, you're multiple time 75 hard guy, right?
Twice. Yeah.
Twice, right?
Oh, wow.
So
I need to do it again. I'm ready to. After spring break, this is not how 75 hard and Anthony Frisello ever imagined it. You're not supposed to say, well, after this time frame, but kids' spring break's coming up. We're doing something really fun. When I come back, I think if you all want to jump on board, I'm going to 75 hard.
I'm going to decline for now. I appreciate the invite, but you were the one that inspired me to do it.
And you did it, right?
Yeah, and I heard about it right before. I was on it when I was on your show, and I'm like, dude, if my pants don't fit, this is why. They're bunched up. I'm losing weight like crazy.
I might go with you on that one.
Yeah?
This is on air.
Yeah.
Because I did 75. I went to do 75 hard last time, and I had to have surgery 9 days in. And I was in the bed trying to do weights, and my wife came in and she was like, "What are you doing? You're not supposed to be moving." I'm like,
"It doesn't count." You're thinking it doesn't count.
But she's like, "Probably not gonna work." So I epic fail. So I think I need some redemption.
Let's do it together. So I don't know if your kid's spring break is the same as ours. It's like March 12th through something. Yeah. And when we get back from that trip, and I want to do, it's interesting. You mentioned your pants falling down, and people have witnessed people who've come through it. Like, oh yeah, that weight loss challenge. Like, stop. It's not a weight loss challenge.
It's a mental challenge.
I want to do it because I don't have really a whole lot of weight to lose. Like, I'll weigh in probably somewhere between 197 and 201. When I'm done, I'll look pretty anemic, and I'll probably be somewhere around 186, which would be too skinny for me. But I'm not doing it to lose weight. Like, I'm going to be happy to slide back up to 195.
Yeah. Right.
But I'm doing it because I could use the mental reset, the 10 pages a night, the no alcohol, the healthy diet. I mean, I don't know your
regiment, man. It's just so regimented.
It was clarity. Clarity.
Yes, I left in my yes, you can is what I left with. Like, that was the pivotal moment in my life. Is it taught me yes, I can. It taught me that I can never use the terms like I don't have time for that. No. I'm not willing to make time. So I changed my vocabulary because of 75 hard. No, don't come at me and say, I can't. I want you to say, I won't. I can't read nonfiction. No, you won't. Can you read, MFer? Like, if you can read nonfiction. You're just choosing not to.
Right, man.
You know, I can't go 75 days without alcohol. I'm like, you're an alcoholic? Like, are you dependent on this? Like, if so, let's get you some help.
Sure.
Right? Oh, you're not willing to. Okay, cool. You know, and then, the books you read, the podcasts you listen to.
You're just on it.
Yes.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, because this has been.
We're getting super long.
No, this is great. I want
nothing but time, man.
I want to ask this question because I feel like it's really important. You know, we spend a lot of time on achievement. We spend a lot of time on regiment and all this discipline stuff, which is great because we love this. You know, you ask why we do the podcast. It's because look, insurance is great. We love serving the community, but this is the stuff that we absolutely dig, right? And it's just our platform to be able to do it and to speak with you. You know, somebody like yourself that's just in it, doing the same thing. It just juices us. But one of the things that's been like really not heavy on me, but really in my awareness lately is doing something that you really love to do, doing things that you really have a passion for, and ultimately, like, you know, just the level of happiness that you feel in the mundane stuff, you know. because there's a lot of people in my life, just like there's a lot of people probably in your life that you look at and go, I don't know if they're happy. And I think a lot of it has to do with just their, what they do on a daily basis. Happiness to me isn't like just going on these vacations and these 3 or 4 or 5 days a year that we kind of break away. Happiness to me is in the grind. It's in the shit, right? It's the I'm stressed. I have this going on. Too much, there's too much going on. There's a conflict in the calendar. I got to move to here. It's in the daily, right? So you mentioned before we turned on the camera about just doing something that you love. I just wanted to ask, how important is it, the happiness factor for you in doing all of these things that you choose to do?
So it's a process, right? I think for anyone tuned in, especially our younger people tuned in, look, you have to eat shit. You have to grind it out. You have to do stuff that you don't like to do. And something that frustrates me working, and I work with a lot of college students or people right out of college, whether it's me as a mentor or me as a manager, and I get this whole, well, I only want to do things that make me happy and make me feel safe. And I'm like, that's a goal. Like that's like a baby saying, I want to be able to compete in the 4x4 relay. Well, you're a baby. Learn to crawl first.
It's so good.
So it's like, I think it's very important for all of us to find something that we like to do, that it doesn't suck going to work, that we like what we do enough that we're willing to do the crappy parts too. But you can make a goal to say, but I want to get to a point in my life, whether it's when I'm 30, 40, or maybe when I'm 50, that I'm only doing the things that A, I'm good at, and B, I like doing. So when I coach business professionals and they start talking about team building and why I need to hire an assistant, we actually have an exercise where we draw 2 lines on a piece of paper, basically making 4 squares, and we work through, like, what do you like to do? What are you good at? What are you good at but you don't like to do?
Yeah.
What do you like to do but you're not good at? And what do you hate doing and you're not good at it? And we hire for that first, right?
So
then we can get, hey, look, you're not good at this, Taylor, and you hate doing it? Cool. The person we hire that you bring onto your team has to do that.
Yeah.
But I think it's not a turn it on and, I'm only going to do things I like to do. I do believe that there is a process. A butterfly started as a caterpillar. Right?
Ooh, I love that. The best description someone ever gave me as I was going through the process of eating shit was, you don't have to necessarily like knocking on doors. You just have to like the opportunity that happens when somebody opens the door and says yes, right? Like, there is the path that is, there's a reason why there's less people achieving where you want to go, and that's because the process to get there sucks, right? It's work. So, but if you can learn to not necessarily have to enjoy the process of knocking on doors, but you're just excited about what's going to happen when you get to the one that opens, I think it's a lot of relief for somebody that wants to do that.
Yeah, we do. We talk a lot about the 12-week challenge in our sales cycle, where I challenge salespeople for 12 weeks to be great at their job when it comes to lead gen.
90 days, basically.
Yeah. Like, you can do anything for 90 days, especially when I'm giving you Saturday and Sunday off.
Right.
But I can suck it up. And if you told me, Dio, I need you to go call 15 strangers right now, I am not going to like it.
Yeah.
But I can suck it up and I can do those 15 calls. And if I can do 15 calls and schedule 1 appointment, then that means every day for the next 90 days, which is really only 60 work days, I'm making 15 cold calls, I'm scheduling 1 appointment, and I'm going on 1 appointment. But if I did that, that means I met with 60 people that I didn't otherwise know just 12 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now those 60 people will end up being whittled down to about 12 to 15 referral sources, right? People in the community who know what I do for a living and want to refer me clients who need my services. And I now know what they do for a living, and I can refer them clients that need their services. But it wasn't fun. So I try to ask people, hey, like the whole saying, how do you eat an elephant? 1 bite at a time. Right? It may take you a whole entire year, but eventually you'll get through it. Don't try to eat the elephant at one sitting. Can you do this for 12 weeks? 75 hard for 75 days. I'm not asking you to do a lifestyle change. Can you do this? Or sober October. Hey, for the month of October, can you just not drink alcohol?
Yeah.
I like, because
the mind works that way.
Yes.
I was doing a
Seasons.
goal.
Yes.
I was doing a goal setting.
Seasons, yeah, I like seasons too.
And our workout partner, because we split up in workout partners, and she told me the annual goal. And I was like, how do you feel about that? She's like, well, I think I can do it, but it's a lot. And I'm like, well, that seems like a lot to me too. What would happen if we, and then I said, well, what's your daily activity? She tells me the daily activity. I said, that's great. I said, what would have to happen, or what would it look like if you chop that down into quarters? What is that metric? She told me the metric. I said, well, how does that feel to say that? And she goes, that feels just better.
Yes.
And I'm like, so why don't we just remove the annual? That's great, but why don't we just race to the end of March? Why don't we go to the end of March? And then we'll pick our head up and we'll look at that. But nothing exists until that March date. And it was almost like you could just hear the stress load come off her shoulders because it's almost like it's not palatable. It's too far away. It's too big of a number, right? But these 90-day runs, I love 90-day runs, by the way, because I like to sprint. I like to run. I don't, I'm not a jogger. I like to run and then take a break and then
So
I'm
you're
run
not going
again.
to come do the half marathon or the half Ironman with me? Because that's not really sprinting.
I think I'm going to do the 75 hard, but I don't think I'm doing the Ironman. I'm not willing to do that.
There
How
you
about
go.
that?
Yes. You're not at a point in your life where that sounds like something you're willing to tackle.
That's right. But there's something about, being able to say, look, I can, I could do anything for 90 days. And then after that, I say, well, I'm not doing this again. Screw this. But at least I completed it. When you make those annuals or bigger or all this, it's almost like, yeah, that sounds great. It's almost like a dream. It's not really a goal. It's like,
Yeah.
Have you guys read Atomic Habits yet?
yeah, great book.
Yeah, I mean,
That's a few
I talk a lot. And in fact, John Coleman tells me if I put it out there, it'll happen.
James Clear's getting on your podcast.
I'm going to have James Clear.
Oh,
I don't
you
know
heard
how
it
it's
here
going to
first.
happen, but I want to have James Clear on the podcast.
He's a stud, by the way.
Yep.
I've listened to multiple podcasts with him. He's a total stud.
I also want to have Chris Voss on the podcast.
Okay.
But
you want to have Chris Voss on the podcast?
Yeah, that's Never Split the Difference.
Never Split the Difference?
Yeah, have you read the book? Never.
He's mirroring you right now.
Oh, yeah.
Shout out to those that have read the book. So.
Yes, but yeah. So I put it out there. But like you all, I don't do the whole Zoom thing. So if we can't meet in person, we're not podcasting.
I love it.
Yeah. So I need to get them in Orlando, and by me get them in Orlando, I need to figure out when they're going to be in Orlando.
Sure, exactly.
And I stalk them on their Twitter feed, and then say, hey, I had this little startup podcast. We don't have that many.
Go to their hotel.
I have gone to hotels. I've podcasted in San Diego. I've podcasted in Nashville. I've driven to hotels, down a hotel 45 minutes away.
No kidding.
Brought the equipment because I knew the person I wanted to interview was going to be there.
That's awesome.
So just got them to sit down with me. I made it easy for them not to say no.
Less friction. Yeah.
But what I love about back on James Clear, and you're talking about habits. I mean, I just did this. Same. It's you can't set a goal. So I had a young loan originator, and she's like, "Yeah, I'm going to be Rookie of the Year." I'm like, "That's amazing," because my branch has produced the past 2 years of Rookie of the Year. It's like, we need to keep the streak alive. I'm glad someone stepped up to the plate. I go, but how does that look? Like you said, how does that look? And she's like, well, what do you mean? I go, well, you're going to need to do at least this much volume and at least this many loans that you've closed. And that's a daunting number if you look at it that way, knowing you only have 19 months to achieve it. But we were able to back it all the way down to where oh, cool. You need 2 leads a day. If you came to work every single day, I don't care about what you were doing, right? Financial advisor, life insurance, homeowners insurance, realtor, lender, etc. You need 2 leads a day. I don't care how you get it. You could drive to Home Depot with 100 business cards, handing them out, saying, this is who I am, this is what I do for a living. Now, Home Depot may kick you out, and then you go to Lowe's. Until Lowe's kicks you out, then you go to Ace Hardware.
Yeah, you go to Miller's. You got plenty of hardware
You've got
stores.
plenty of places. And Home Depot's, just because you got kicked out of one doesn't mean they've already talked to the one across town about
so
you.
true.
But you have a cell phone. How many people are in your cell phone? You have Facebook. You have Instagram.
Yeah.
If you really wanted it, and you knew, well, wait a minute, all I have to do is get 2 new leads. I don't care if the lead qualifies or not.
Right.
I know numbers don't lie. 2 leads a day equals 60 leads a month. You convert at 20%. There's 12 transactions.
It's almost liberating.
Yeah.
It's
objective. It's objective. It's get away from your feelings and get objective with the process, like the 90-day sprint. I actually wrote a journal entry called Seasons of Imbalance, right? It's like somebody starts a business and they think that early on in business.
Was this before or after yoga?
This is I journal when I'm excruciating.
By the way, did you know
internally.
he's an incredible writer? He's an incredible writer.
I could see that.
He's a very good writer.
Yeah. But my best journal entry is when I'm just, pain, comes out and it's either frustration or I'm hitting a wall and I express better in the written word.
Okay, but when you journal out of curiosity, do you journal often or only when it...
Lately, I went through a season where I journaled a lot and then I have stepped away a little bit. So it's kind of like an ebb and flow. So
And how long is a journal entry typically? I'm intrigued by this.
Legit. Like a page. Like if you're in Microsoft Word, like a page or 2.
Double space with 12-point font? Or are we doing 8-point font?
We're doing 11-point font. But the journal's called Seasons of Imbalance, and it's just look, you start a business, don't expect time freedom and wealth and you doing exactly what you do just because you started a business. It's actually quite the opposite. It's going to be more work, but it's seasons of imbalance. You have to get imbalanced in that season in order to have that spring and or, summer and fall. Like there's got to be a winter. There's got to be a price. And it's funny. We've been on seasons and 90-day runs. If your mind allows you to do that and you know that all pain comes to an end, I'm going to be doing this for 90 days, 75 days, whatever it is, you can free yourself up to just give it everything you have and to not miss and whatever. And you can literally change the course of your career, your life, your financial situation by honoring seasons of imbalance. And then you can come back to a more sustainable presence and so on and so forth. But I think young people, new business owners, leaders sometimes think like too much in the sustainability realm without thinking, hey, I'm going to get temporarily way imbalanced to allow myself to fall back in. So this is like church for me. I feel like it's Sunday.
It's just important because we get this whole concept of work-life balance, and that sounds great in the macro, but man, my life is imbalanced all the time.
Yes.
I'm running hard at a project, and I know that I got a window and I got a gap, and I've known that works. I've done this for 15 years, and it's just, if you got something that's hot and needs to be done, you're hot on it and you got to go, right? And then you hit a milestone. Maybe you pull back for a second, you celebrate, you take some second, you spend some time doing the things that maybe you neglected, and then you reevaluate. But that's such a great. I put this. I don't know. I think it was on my Instagram the other day. It's almost like I go back to child of creating friction. Of these situations. I'm trying to teach my son this right now, and not necessarily teach him, show him. Just because you can get something, just because I can get him something, that doesn't mean that I should. And our dad was so good at this. He created so much friction in our life, so much challenge to where he could have made it easy, and he almost went out of his way to make it difficult. And I think that's helped us a lot through the process of just going through this experience, because it was just kind of like normal. Like, when's the last time you heard life isn't fair? I don't even hear that anymore. But when I grew up, that's the only thing I hear.
You're right. That's very intriguing. Well, I'm happy to share that. And this was my wife's idea, so I have to give her credit for it. My son, when he was probably, I don't know, he's now a junior in high school. He was probably an 8th grader or 7th grader. And my wife is very diligent about cooking healthy meals in our household. Mm-hmm. Like, if it comes from a package, we're not going to eat it. We do meatless Tuesday, like all things that I benefit from, and so do my children. But the problem, kids are kids. Yeah. So kids like sugar. They like, white bread.
Your son's like in the closet just ripping on chicken wings on Tuesday or what?
Oh, we won't even go there. I dare you to go into his closet or underneath his bed and see how many Bang energy drink, how many cookie, just empty stuff that he'll go out and buy, and he like confiscates it and he takes it upstairs so no one can see it. And it's just very unhealthy, but he's a teenager. Yeah. But before that, he really wanted Snapchat. And as parents, like, we loathe technology. We hate social media. Our kids are all on it. We wish we lived in a world that we were so strong that we wouldn't allow them to do it, right? But we did. But see, you want a Snapchat, we're like, hell to the no. Like, you're not getting Snapchat. Made a deal with them, though. You talk about your dad making things hard. Yeah. We need you to go 30 days without complaining about one dinner. Oof. Because every night, both he and his sister are complaining. I remember those days. Oh, my God. By the way, my wife is an amazing cook. Wow. Her meals are, what's really cool is she wasn't when I married her. Wow. Right. She found this passion and this thing that she enjoys probably 7 years ago. So we made it hard on him.
How'd that go?
He did it.
He did it.
He did it. So now.
So it wasn't a 90-day run. It was a 30-day run.
I don't even remember, but I think it was 30.
He's paying some sort of price. Yes. He's giving something up. Yes. It doesn't have to be,
there's an exchange.
You're kicked out of the house. It just has to be a little bit of friction.
Yeah. But what's cool now is anytime he'll typical teenager, his mom will be like, dude, you just got blah, blah, blah grade. You need to do better. And he's like, I can't. She goes, yes, you can. She goes, I watched you not complain about one meal for 30 consecutive days in order to get something. So I know you can. Mm-hmm. So then we teach him, just tell me you won't. Hey, look, I'm not willing to do that, Mom. Wow. I am not willing to make that a priority so that I'm going to do X.
What a powerful shift at a young age.
Because he's going, well, what do you mean I won't? No, I'm not. No, you don't. No, it's not that I won't. And you're like, yes. And he's going, damn, I'm in a tough spot here. I have to say something I really don't want to say. Yeah. I bet she's very reluctant. You haven't even have that come out of his mouth.
He's a great kid. It's funny. I look forward to him being an adult.
That's great.
I'm at a point.
More of a buddy. You're having a beer on the back porch. Yeah, he's going through something.
I look forward to knowing him at 30. Like, I think he's going to be just such a cool dude to hang out with. Yeah. It's hard to do that when they're your kids. Like when my kids were your kids' age, Taylor, I was like, I can't wait for them to get older. I can't wait for them to get older. And then as they get older, they become harder. Right? How old are yours?
Let's see. Just about to turn 8.
Okay.
And then the little one is 2.
So the 8-year-old's in my, I call it the sweet spot.
I was about to say, I think that's the sweet spot.
6 to 12 is a very sweet spot. But as they get older, their problems become more real.
Yeah.
Right now, you're worried about pack and plays and nap times and diapers.
He's worried about him. He's worried about his sanity right now.
Yeah, well,
thanks for bringing that up. I'm going to hit a journal entry after this podcast.
But
2 in diapers, man.
Now that I'm pushing, oh my gosh, she's going to be out of the house in a year and a half, and oh my gosh, she's going to high school. I'm like, okay, time slow down.
Yeah.
Right? Because for the longest time, I wanted to go get older. But in a weird way, as I was mentioning about with my son, I am looking forward to him being 30 or 28. I am really worried about him from 18 to 22.
Yeah.
Like that's still
It
the
should
dad
be,
is.
man. If I could go back, I'm like, how did we survive
Dude,
this?
how am I not dead?
Yeah.
How am I not in jail?
And by the way, what you just said, I'm relating this because it needs to be related. Think about when you start a business. Like, all you do is wish that you got to a certain point, and then you get to that certain point, and you kind of wish it was back there.
Yes. I'm so glad you said that, because I vividly remember the late nights. And by the way, that's what people don't see.
Yeah.
That maybe joined our organizations later. They didn't see the late nights. Right. They didn't see the hours that were put in or the stress that we were under. But I vividly remember Mike Small and I having a conversation. It was more about personal income. Could you imagine if we could do X?
Yeah.
Oh my God, what if it was Y? What if it was this?
Yes.
And then it's like you achieve that certain success from a business standpoint, and it brings in the fruits of your labor, and the income does come with it. And then you get to a point where you're like, crap, it's not about income. It's not about assets. Like, those things are great, don't get me wrong, but it's like the journey. And was I appreciating the journey? I don't think you can appreciate until you're through it, because when you're in it, you're so freaked the F out.
Yeah.
One of the best pieces of advice to get from the guy that coaches me is, because we all have anxiety during the process, right? And he's like, look, man, it's like this. He goes, you look at the scoreboard. He goes, if you knew you were going to win the game and you turned the ball over, would you be at peace with it? If you knew what the outcome was going to be, would you just relax a little bit if you turned the ball over? I was like, well, yeah. He goes, you win, man. You win. All right. I know the scoreboard. You know the scoreboard. You win. So just relax a little bit. And I'm like, it is a good reminder. I mean, I need to be reminded that sometimes. I think we all need to be reminded that sometimes. It's hard because, it's easy to go back because you win. But what if you could live in the outcome or the philosophy that, like, you know how this ends.
Yeah. On a similar note, so what I'm struggling with right now as a business professional is, so I'm fortunate that I helped launch a business 14 years ago that does really well. And it's stable. And it has a great leadership team. And it's like, it's what you want to achieve. But then I had the 2 new business ventures that I launched both of them in the beginning of 2022.
Yeah.
And luckily, the babies. Yeah. And luckily, because of the first one, man, there's lots of learning curve that's been shortened.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of know-how that was picked up amongst 14 years that I now can share with the 2 other businesses and the people who help lead and run those businesses.
Right.
But I still want it now. I still wake up frustrated that, our website's not where I envision it to be, and we haven't kicked off coaching yet, or we haven't placed enough professionals through our recruiting system, or on the real estate investment side, why haven't we built more than 2 homes? And why are we only buying 3 homes a month when we should be buying 6 homes a month? And I have to dial it back even still and almost coach myself.
Yeah.
Like, hey, bro, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's you're going to win.
You're going to win.
You know what you're doing. You have the right team in place. It's just the second quarter.
Yep.
Like, it's the second quarter.
And there's also a level of awareness that says it's good that you have. It's good that you want the urgency. It's good that you want it because that's what pushes you, right? So, but it's also good for your mental health to take a step back and go, dude, relax a little bit. I'm talking to myself.
Well, I did this yesterday, man. I did this. I was obsessing
after
about
journaling or before journaling.
Now I need to journal. I was obsessing about a decision that in my mind was a big decision. And I felt it. I'm like, dude, this is out of balance. Like, you've thought about this. You know this. You're going to get to a decision. You have to put your phone down and go to dinner with your wife. You're out of balance. So I think it's just understanding when you're out of balance.
Sure.
And then when you go, okay, yeah, I'm going to wake up at 4 a.m. because I want to get this is on my mind. I'm not going to apologize for that. Yeah. But there's a certain point where you're like, okay, now I'm not even able to focus on a conversation because
you're not
I'm
creating.
So
you're just
it's
stewing.
Survival, stewing.
Yeah.
Fear, all the stuff that's not driving you. It's to your detriment. So.
Hey, is your journal? I'm really intrigued by this. I really can't. I can't even focus right now.
My whole journal in the show notes.
His journal's unbelievable. Man. I'm jealous.
Is it just for you, or do you share it with your wife and your brother and your business partners?
Most of it's just for me, but then there are some stuff that I do share with like a relevant group of people. Seasons of Imbalance was one I shared with our team leads that were kind of starting something new. And it was a great reminder for us because we're in a new situation where we're opening in new markets and people are starting businesses within the business and growing. So it allows us to kind of revisit that phase, and kind of live vicariously through those early days. But I feel like we have so much to give because we've lived it. And so it's kind of, some of my journal entries are like that. And then some are very personal. And then some of them are just straight up gratitude. Like in a moment, I'm looking over this beautiful setting and it's just a reflection type of thing. So
it's all of the above.
Yes.
So it's not just Dear Diary.
No.
Brett pissed me off today. Yeah. Rob made me cry. I want to punch them in the face.
No, it's none of that.
Okay.
There are days where I have frustrations where I get it on the page. I have this journal called Most People Won't, which I won't share it, but it's like most people won't. It's a frustration upon most people not being willing to do what it was required for them to achieve what they said was important. It was just something that was frustrating. I drive and I revisit it often, but it's just for me.
Do you ever have an idea of publishing that once you do have enough journal entries that are not too specific to you personally?
I would like to do it for my kids. I would like to different phases of my life. I have this thought, and I want to do this through video too, but like I want them to know me in that moment, right? So like when they're older, they're going to know me as a 60-year-old or a 50-year-old or a 70-year-old, but I want them to get a glimpse of who I was in my 20s or my 30s and see those challenges, struggles, frustrations, wins, gratitude when they were born. So every decade, them to be given a snapshot of who I was so they feel like they know me.
It's really cool. Have you guys given thought to this? You're doing it right now. You're doing it right now. I didn't even think of this. John Coleman told me this. He said, if anything ever happens to you, how cool is it that you have 203 videos online that will live forever with your name, your likeness, and your voice and most of your thoughts?
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And I was like, wow. Like that's, anyone who's thinking, well, why should I podcast? Maybe think of it as journaling, right? And if you are a good writer, I love to write. Like that is.
Are you a writer?
I love to write. Yep,
that's awesome.
And I write salesy marketing things, more than anything. But like in the early days, we didn't have a marketing department.
Yeah.
So true story, I got my snip on Super Bowl Sunday. Kicked my wife and kids.
Got mine coming up.
High five.
Let's go. Yeah.
It's the best $250 I've ever spent. Don't be nervous. Don't be nervous. It was awesome. They gave me one Valium. That's all I needed. I got all loopy. My wife reminds me I went into the rabbit hole.
Guys.
Went out in the waiting room. I'm like, hey, you want to come back and watch? She was like, no, what are you doing? I was like wearing like the robe, but the Valium had kicked in. So
it's not a spa, Dustin.
Yeah, I was all loopy. But no, so I sat and wrote the first marketing library, Waterstone, the company, not just my region, but the company I ever had, was stuff that I wrote the weekend that I had to spend with peas in my lap. But I got to do it during Super Bowl weekend, so I watched all the cheesy like specials on the best commercials and all of that. And it's funny, John was looking for some content for the website, and I started going through some old brochures and marketing folders, and I was on our company's intranet site. And I'm reading stuff. I was like, oh crap, I think I wrote this. Like I forgot about it. Like I think I wrote this. So yeah, I like to write. I like the idea of writing a book. I've said, if you had talked to me 3 years ago, I'm like, I'm gonna write a book. But the problem is I don't want to write a book. So right now I have to say I'm not willing to do what it takes to write a book, but I have all these ideas that I wish I could find a writer, and could I just dictate all the things I want to say in the book, and let's lay out the chapters and the flow and then put the knowledge out there. But
that's what I think is cool, because if you're writing all this stuff, you can kind of piece together and you already have the content.
Yes.
I envy that so much, and I tell him this all the time. And I've actually started, by the way. They're actually messages to the kids, and I just think that's so cool to be able to give that, along the way. I just want to tell you, I think that's one of the coolest things that you do, man. I'm it's one of the things I'm gonna get better at. I probably will never do it to the level in which you do, because it just exudes out of you. But even if I can do a little bit, I just think that would be cool, that when I'm done and gone, grandkids can open up a couple journal entries and see kind of what's flowing through your head at that age.
Is it true that as a kid, so T.Y. told me this once, as a kid, he was marble mouthed, that he could not hold a conversation.
Yes.
He wouldn't look you in the eyes. He looked down.
And just mumble?
He just
like had my hand all over my mouth.
Yeah, he just wasn't he just was
That
not
is so awesome because now the dude does like color commentary
Right.
for UCF radio. He does this podcast. He's a great speaker. It gives anyone hope out there, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
and he's a very good one, right? Like
Yes.
he's a really good one.
yes,
it
but maybe
is-
that's where journaling came from. Maybe
Yeah.
deep down, it may have came from, hey, I struggle taking the thoughts in my head and let them spit out of my mouth. Let me take the thoughts in my head and let them go through a pen.
Well, I think he still says that today. I think he has a better. My dad is that way. My dad, would always write us these letters. Whenever something would happen or he wanted to express himself, and he'd send us like an email.
Yeah.
Or he would write a note and he would make sure we got it. And I always thought to myself, oh, just come talk to me. But later on in life, you find out that he just he expresses himself better through the pen, and he's a very good writer. And I think that I see a lot of that in Taylor.
And this is a good way to wrap up. When you talk about content and producing content, it can be the written word. It can be your voice. It could be audio without video. Right? There's so many avenues, and to get your voice out. And one of the things that's cool that your inspiration about the Loan Officer podcast, and I love what we're doing here, and we're not a fraction of where you are. The fact that you've put out over 200 episodes in 2 years is so impressive. I mean, I can't even tell you. Just the discipline and the consistency and the production, so much goes into that. So mad props. But I think, some people are like, well, yeah, there's so many podcasts now. It's like, well, isn't that a good thing? Like everyone should have a voice, or the people that are willing to put themselves out. There's value, there's a perspective, there's something you can learn from everyone. So I love that. And so I would just encourage anybody out there that is maybe considering starting a podcast or considering writing down and recording your thoughts, I'd encourage you to do it. Get started, right? Shoot a mini bullet. You don't have to have a cannonball. You don't have to figure it out. You don't have to know who you're going to hire or the camera equipment and like that. But you just have the intention of sharing and expressing what you value to the world. And I think that is an audience, because your audience will tell you from there if it's valuable, what they'd like to hear more, all that different stuff. You don't have to have that all figured out.
That's spot on and well said. And the three of us know this, but the best time to start something is today. Mm-hmm. Right? Today, you want a podcast? Cool. Grab your phone and talk into it.
Yep.
And then Google, how do I produce a podcast cheaply? And then you have the audio, and now you can start producing. Put it out there. It'll suck. That's okay.
Yeah.
Right? I encourage you to go listen to episodes 1 through 40 on whether you do it on Spotify, Apple, or on our YouTube channel. Yeah. I cringe when I go back and watch them, but I knew that was where we had to start.
Because that's a process that you've learned, right? That's not just, I'm going to do that. Like, that's so important, man, because the longer you're at this game, you realize that it's so much more important to start and then get better than it is to figure out how to start really well.
Yeah, and that's life. Like I was sharing with you guys how I just ran that half marathon in New Orleans 2 years ago. I could not run for 5 minutes consecutively. Mm-hmm. I was not in the right shape. So I would have to run 2 minutes. My run's really a jog, walk a minute, run 2, walk. And I went out to New Orleans. I ran 13.1 miles. I never stopped.
Wow.
I ran that race in it was 8-minute, 40-second miles, which for anyone who's a runner, it's a decent time for an amateur, for someone who does this on the side. But to imagine, that was just 2 years. Imagine how much better I'll be maybe in 2 more years if I can stick with the sport and actually work on getting better. You mentioned journaling, and I have this thought that I want to share with the entire audience, but both you too, because I have an idea of the type of relationship you have with your parents, and journaling. If you have not heard of this, there's a product out there called Storyworth. So we've purchased it for my parents, also for my wife's parents. And what it does is it gives whoever gets the Storyworth product, it gives them a question to answer every week, and they answer the question. The question is typically like, tell me about one of your favorite childhood memories. Tell me about your first car. Tell me about your first love. Tell me this. And then over the course of a year, they would have answered, both mom and dad or whoever you bought it for, will answer up to 12 to 15 questions. And they're writing sometimes 3 sentences, sometimes they're writing 3 paragraphs.
You get all this information.
And then it puts it into a book.
Oh, wow.
So how about the 2 of you? Do you have any other siblings? You have another?
Just us.
Okay. But even for the 2 of you to look back on maybe in 20 or 25 years, to be able to then share with your kids, because we never know what type of relationship and how well will our children know our parents.
Yeah.
If we're fortunate,
that's cool.
My children will know their grandparents well into my children's 20s and 30s. Mm-hmm. But what if they don't? What if they only know their grandparents into their teens?
Yeah. Right.
How cool is it in 10 years' time to be able to say, hey, read this.
Yeah.
Let me introduce you a little bit to the adults.
Does it allow you to do video? Or no? Is it just written word?
Yeah, I mean, look it up. Storyworth is the name of the product.
That's cool.
But it's really cool when you start
like
talking about journaling, and you're talking about journaling because you want to do so for your children, and you're hoping that there's certain journal entries you're going to be able to share with your children, and some you'll publish and put into a book. If you want to go on a much smaller scale,
I like that. It's easy. Yeah.
Why not look in Storyworth? Maybe for you. Maybe if you want to journal, but you don't really know where to start, then you can start with a product like Storyworth. But I believe what Storyworth does eventually is it puts into a book for you.
Yeah. That's cool.
Right. So it's kind of like, Shutterfly for your memories instead of Shutterflies for pictures.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
So get started.
Yeah,
whatever it is, get started.
Get started. Work on being extraordinary.
Dude.
Take what works for ordinary and just do like 20% more. And then when you're tired of doing 20% more, do 50% more.
I love that.
Yes.
Man, this has been like, we've gone for, God, how long?
Almost an hour and a half, I think.
It's amazing. I appreciate so much you coming into the studio.
Will I earn longest episode?
I don't.
You know what? I think when the three of us go, we've had some 2-hour ones. We've tried to pare them down because you want to be respectful of a guest's time. But this is the longest one in the last couple weeks, couple months. Yeah. So that's good.
Yeah, I tend to talk a lot. I apologize for anyone who's like, Dio, just shut up. I want to hear Brett or TY. My apologies.
That's why you have a successful podcast.
Yeah, but if you do enjoy it, hey, look. When you're done tuning in to Be Extraordinary, go check out TLOP. It's pretty legit.
Doubt.
Even if you're not a mortgage lender, don't let the name fool you.
I love it.
That's what I was going to end with was, man, thank you so much for coming on the show, but also for the viewers at home. I've listened to the podcast. I continue to subscribe to the podcast. I get just as much out of it than a loan officer would because it's principles of just professionals and stuff that you didn't necessarily learn in high school. Some of the stuff that maybe you didn't get taught as far as from a business perspective. You guys touch on all that. So if somebody wanted to listen to the podcast, where can they go? Give them all the digits.
It is The Loan Officer Podcast. It's on YouTube. That's the name of the channel, The Loan Officer Podcast, Spotify, Apple, Stitcher. The website, check it out. It's tloponline.com. You can also go to theloanofficerpodcast.com. We just think TLOP Online sounds better. Our fans started calling us TLOP. Isn't that cool?
Yeah, that's cool.
So it's like now it's the TLOP community.
Yeah, you don't make your own nickname.
No, you don't. Well, some people do, but they're douchebags. But here's what I want to do. We are going to have a TLOP Live. The first TLOP Live will be in Orlando.
Oh, wow.
Will you guys come and keynote some of that for us?
Oh, man, I'd be humbled.
Yeah? I'd love to have you on the main stage. You're both students. You're students of personal development. You're students of business. Like, not only you're practitioners, but like I see what you do. You're going to the Tony Robbins events. You have a personal coach. I get to see when TY posts. I mean, I'm actually jealous of all of the team building events that you all do when you go off site and you guys have a really good time. And Brett's standing up and he has a drink in his hand, but he's still doing the rah-rah stuff. I love rah-rah. Like I buy into that. So yeah, it'd be really good to introduce you all to our audience, and it'd be great for them to hear from someone who's not mortgage specific. So yes, if you'll be willing to say yes,
absolutely,
putting you on the spot, I'm putting it out there. It might not be 2022. It'll definitely be 2023. We will be hosting TLOP Live.
Hell yes.
Yep, cool. And then we'll have details about that on theloanofficerpodcast.com. But he's Taylor Young. He's Brett Young. I'm Dustin Owen.
Let's go.
That's all the time we have for you today.
There you go.
No,
man.
Go ahead and take us out, Brett.
Well, we like to say, don't be ordinary. Yeah. What should we be, Dio?
Extraordinary.
Extraordinary. Thanks for tuning in, guys.
Fantastic. That was fun.
That was so fun, man.
Dude.
Way to close us out, buddy.
Yeah.